Especially for those in Silicon Valley, tech companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Google face criticism from lawmakers over their role in the 2016 election. Does this mean regulations are coming for these tech giants and how they use your data and privacy? And what does it mean for political campaigns in the near future? For more on this, we turn to two observers on the issue. Stephen Kent is a political commentator with Young Voices. And Joe Stewart is a longtime political commentator in North Carolina. We're not calling you old, Joel, just very experienced. Good to see you in here.
If I was wine, I'd be very expensive.
Good to see you both. Thank you so much. Obviously, it's been a tumultuous year for these, social media sites and what's happened. You work with, young folks in mind. Where do you sort of see what's happened in 2018 with this?
Well, I think that Facebook, the FANG companies have all fallen victim to the worst impulses of both Republicans and Democrats, some of their deepest paranoias. They want to project onto them all of their own problems that they cannot solve. Republicans, if it rains on a birthday, they're going to probably be on the cable news the next night talking about how the weather is biased against conservatives. Democrats, I think, do not want to accept that sometimes people don't want to vote for them, and they write them off as either being stupid or being deceived. And those are the two complexes that you see at play here, both the fake news narrative and the data sharing problem. It's not going to get better for them. It's only going to get worse.
You think so?
Oh yeah. This is not going to turn around for them. The model is being set in the EU. And once Facebook eventually plays ball with the European Union on data regulations and privacy, it's going to make its way over here by way of our populist movement here in the United States.
I have a bunch of follow-ups. But Joe, first of all, from a more political perspective, how do the politicians handle this then, right? Because it's difficult. I mean, there's stuff out there, especially when you talk about President Trump and some of the others about what's out there about them and what to believe. This seems to be not only uncharted, but tough territory.
Well, it's hard to imagine at this point, but as President of the United States started to use radio as a way to communicate directly with the American people. And some folks thought that was inappropriate, that there needed to be a more statesman-like way for the president to convey their thoughts. Well, we've seen technology enhance the way information is made available to people. I'm old enough now, I can remember when not everybody had a fax machine, and not everybody has a fax machine again. The wave of technology is, yeah, that's right. But to some extent, I think these are new technologies, and we always struggle a little. When Gutenberg produced the first book, how is this going to change things? We just have to learn how to adapt. Now, some part of this is people are concerned about what seemingly to them is private information suddenly becomes subject to a consumer choice, the way that they're being advertised to, the way that products are marketed, rely heavily on this data. But we're supplying some of this information freely through these mediums. The challenge really in politics is we used to have a filter called a journalist and someone who was trained and abided by a certain code of conduct. Now the pipeline is wide open and anybody can say anything about anyone else, and it's very hard to determine what's true and what's not.
The journalists are still here, though. They're still, most of us are. All right, so young folks, isn't there a lot at stake here, though, for these companies? Because young folks are the folks that are largely using a lot of these. Casey Hunt from MSNBC and NBC, she said she's getting off Facebook last night. Yeah. Do you think we could see a wave of people saying, forget this, or are they just too addicted and too connected?
I think I'm going to go the way of too addicted, too connected. I see tons of people write off Facebook on Facebook, and then share their breakup letter with Facebook, and then they're still there the next week talking about why they don't like Facebook. It's a way of life. It's a way of connectivity. People very much value that. And I think Joe is spot on about the transaction that is being made, the trade-off that is being made with these tech companies when you're on their free platform, which gives you connectivity, an ability to talk to anybody that you want to talk to. You share your data, and we're very loose with what that means. Data means so many things. It could be your email. It could be your name, your zip code. It could be your preferences, your browser history. It can also be your face or your fingerprint. So I think that there needs to be more nuance in the conversation about data privacy and what is sort of in bounds for sharing and selling and what is out of bounds.
These tech companies are kind of, keeping the distance on how this should be handled. But there's a lot at stake for them at the same time, right? It's like they're trying to toe an interesting line.
Yeah, these are some of the richest people in the world at this point. If people flee the platform or there's some regulations put on them, I don't know if it can be that much worse than what has happened to Facebook in the past year with its stock price falling so far and dragging the rest of the market down with it than we've already seen. I do think Facebook is going to make room for regulations at some point. Like Apple's Tim Cook has sort of mentioned, that's the way this this is going to go, but they need to set the narrative and set the tone in which these things come about. And Americans do not want to have government, politicians involved in crafting their social media experience. When I get on Facebook, I see things that I would mostly like to see. I get served products that I want to see, news that I like. I get prioritized messages and timeline feed from people that I enjoy talking to. Facebook gives me that by looking at my data and sharing that with other people. So I don't necessarily want to lose that as a user, and many others don't either.
It is still hard to get used to, though, when you go to Amazon and look up a product, and then you go to Facebook and that adds on your timelines.
Oh my gosh! Oh, and you know, Google Home and Alexa. I mean, they're listening. Like, you know, they're hearing your conversations and stuff. That's an entire other thing.
I know. But this still is the way of the future for campaigns, right? It's just a matter of how we get to the end line.
Well, there's two important things to remember that will happen in 2019. Demographers say sometime in the course of that year, millennials populational cohort in the world. And also, in sometime in 2019, we'll reach the tipping point where half of the world's population will have access to the internet. And so this will only continue to expand. We have to remember America is only 5% of the world's consumers. There's still a huge segment of the planet that's not fully experienced this burgeoning internet communication connectivity. It's very hard to imagine. But I think there will have to be a serious look at how this information is used, particularly in a political context where a candidate running for office is subject to an attack by a nameless, faceless, ghost kind of enterprise. There's got to be some way we can put in place a standard so that a candidate has a fighting chance to respond when allegations are made, but there's not a person to respond to.
We're almost out of time here, but on the regulation front, I've seen so many things on social media memeing or showing videos of these lawmakers not understanding who they're even talking to. I mean, how do we get regulations that make sense when it appears many of these lawmakers don't understand the platforms?
That's a $1 million question. I mean, you have to make government more sexy to young people to actually want to go bring their talents to work there. I mean, how many people want to come out of college, some of the finest technical schools in the country, and go work in a stuffy 70s style office in Washington? Not many. I'm not saying that we should pump money into DC to give them renovations and help them flow better, but the workplace is going to have to change, and government's going to have to keep up with the people whom it is serving, because currently the regulations and politicians are not going to be able to keep up with the way this technology moves. All the bright minds are going out to California.
All right. Well, check your social media, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Appreciate it.